Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto build ultimate harem with X Mikoto X Yugito X Mei X Fu X Kurotsuchi X Tayuya X Karui X Hana and X Anko, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Last time on Naruto, Force Unleashed. The first thing about controlling your force power is, Revan paused for dramatic tension as Naruto looked on with an excited expression, meditating. Revan and Galen couldn't help but burst out laughing at Naruto since his face had went from excited to eating dirt at the mention of meditation. Naruto jumped back to his feet as he glared at the laughing pair. I hate you. Present time, 5 hours after Naruto started training with Revan and Galen. Naruto could be seen sitting cross-legged on a smooth gray rock in the middle of the stream in a meditative position. Revan and Galen simply observed from the side. Naruto tried to do as Revan had told him. He slowed down his breathing as he spread out his newfound awareness of the life around him. Steady my breathing and heartbeat, don't let anything distract me but at the same time remain aware of my surroundings. Stretch out with my awareness and try to sense the force flowing in and around all living things. Naruto chanted in his head as the rocks and pebbles in the stream suddenly started to levitate due to an unknown force. Revan looked on amazed while Galen was gobsmacked. He had taken a week to get that down while normal Padawans took a month of training but Naruto had done it in 5 hours. Naruto, you may open your eyes now. Revan stated simply, and as soon as Naruto opened his eyes, the levitating objects fell back into the stream with soft plops. He sensed Revan's good mood and had seen Galen's shocked face, so he assumed that he had done it correctly. Revan-sensei, what do I have to accomplish next? Naruto asked calmly. Revan noted this may be a side effect of the meditation, as Naruto seemed to be less brash and more composed. That's it for now, Naruto, since it's about time for you to awake. Since you were meditating, your body had experienced the similar effects of a good night's sleep, so you don't have to worry about that. Galen replied instead as the young boy nodded before disappearing from the rock. I can sense greatness in that one, Revan. So do I, but as you know, power corrupts and we can only hope that Naruto does not succumb to the temptations of the dark side of the Force. Revan sighed as he seemed to relive memories of his life long past. Naruto's home. Naruto yawned loudly as he stretched and rubbed the sleep from his eyes before hopping off his bed and into the shower for a quick bath. Making his way out of the bathroom just 5 minutes later, he then realized that there was someone in his kitchen. Stealthily making his way to the kitchen, he was relieved that it only turned out to be the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Ohio Naruto-kun, am I right in assuming that you have yet to eat your breakfast? He said in a grandfatherly tone. Ohio Gigi. Nope, I just woke up and was going to grab a quick bite before heading to the academy. Naruto grinned but inwardly sighed as the Hokage didn't seem to see through the act. How about I treat you to some Ichiraku's ramen for breakfast, Naruto-kun, what do you say? Yada. Free ramen for breakfast, thanks Gigi. You're the best. Naruto shouted but inwardly groaned. Dear Kami. Acting this obnoxious is seriously getting on my nerves. The Hokage and Naruto made their way to the ramen stand before sitting down and telling the chef their respective orders. Naruto saw from the corner of his eye that the Hokage was about to say something. Naruto-kun, where were you last night? Well, Gigi, I was on the way home when those mean people started to chase me around the village again, so I ran away from them. I ran for half an hour before I turned into a dead end and the people started to hurt me before I fainted when a burning sensation spread across my skin. Naruto recalled with tear-filled eyes and a quivering lower lip to add to the effect. Damn, I'm good. The Best Actor award goes to Namikaze Uzumaki. Naruto. It's going to be alright, Naruto-kun, I promise once you become a ninja that all these things will stop. Hiruzen comforted the child while his mind raced through the possibilities. It seemed young Naruto really didn't know what happened. The only logical reason is that the Kyuubi took over as a failsafe to protect him. You promise, Gigi? Then I'm going to be the best ninja ever. Datbayo. And when I'm strong enough, I will take that hat from you, Gigi. Just watch me, I am going to be the best Hokage ever Dadbao. Naruto boasted as he pumped a fist into the air. I feel like killing myself now, but I understand what Revan-sensei meant by hiding my skills. I'm sure you will, Naruto-kun. Now run along. I'm sure Iruka is already starting to look for you since classes started 15 minutes ago. Hiruzen said as Naruto nodded his head enthusiastically before slurping down the remainder of his ramen and leapt off the stool in the direction of the academy. Iruka's class. Class, who can tell me what the... Iruka's question was interrupted by the slamming open of a door. Standing in the doorway was a panting and grinning Naruto. Sorry Iruka-sensei. The Hokage wanted to talk to me about something over breakfast but forgot about the time. Naruto managed to get out between breaths. That's alright Naruto, just take a seat while I continue on with my lesson. Iruka sighed as Naruto thanked him before taking a seat between two of his classmates. Since Naruto failed the academy 3 times, this is his classmates during his first year attempt. Before I was interrupted, who can tell me what the bloodline of the Shadaime Hokage was and what it could do? Iruka asked, but Naruto tuned it out and focused on his force meditation instead. Wow, it's like I can sense where everybody is by their force presence. It seems like everyone has their own feel in the force. It's almost like seeing with your eyes closed. Naruto thought as he suddenly sensed an incoming object through his force awareness before reaching out a hand to catch the incoming duster with his eyes still closed. How? Who? What? When? Iruka stumbled over his own words as his jaw along with everyone else's was hanging off the hinges at the amazing feat. Naruto, how did you manage to catch that without looking? That's simple. I'm just that awesome. Naruto exclaimed loudly, causing 90% of the class to facefo while the remainder sweat dropped at the retarded answer. Never mind that now, just tell me what the Shadaime's bloodline was and what it could do. Iruka asked after he had recovered, causing Naruto to scratch his head sheepishly. It was something to do with plants or trees, right? He could make them appear from nowhere like magic. He was awesome. Naruto replied with his Dobi mask in place. Close but not really correct. The Shadaime's bloodline was the Mokudan wood release, and it allowed him to grow wood or vines from the ground or even turn parts of his body into wood to attack the enemy. Iruka corrected with a sigh as he continued with the lesson, which Naruto tuned out again but this time meditated with his eyes open. Oh hey oh Kit. A voice suddenly said, which almost caused Naruto to jump out of his sit before realizing that only one person called him that. Oh hey oh Q-chan. Naruto greeted in return, which caused said demoness to blush at the additional suffix before mentally grinning. Oh Q-chan, now is it? Whatever happened to Kyuubi-sensei? Kyuubi asked with a pout evident in her tone. During training I will refer to you as such, but since we aren't training I don't have to call you that. Naruto replied with a smirk before he remembered something. Hey Q-chan. Last night I had a strange dream after leaving the mindscape. Well Kit, did it have to do with us performing lewd acts together? Kyuubi asked as she snickered when Naruto's face turned so red it started to look like an apple. No. I was in a forest and met up with these two cloaked figures and they introduced themselves as Darth Revan and Galen Merrick. Naruto was interrupted by sharp gasp from his tenant. Do you know them, Q-chan? Yes I do Kit, both of them were once the strongest warriors in the universe. Legend claimed that Galen Merrick, also known as Starkiller, was so strong in the force that he managed to drag down a space ship the size of Konoha. Am I right in the proportion? While Darth Revan was the strongest Sith Lord in his time, his control over the Force was unmatched by anyone. Naruto was speechless after hearing that. He had a teacher that could levitate the entire village with his control over the Force. It was then that Naruto made a promise to himself that he would train diligently so he could make his masters proud as well as be a force to be reckoned with. So what did they want with you, Kit? Kyuubi suddenly asked. They said I was the only force-sensitive individual on this planet and they were going to train me to be a continuation of their legacies. Naruto took the stunned silence as shock, so he continued. Revan-sensei and Galen-sensei taught me how to tap into the force by meditating and I succeeded after 5 hours of continuous practice, it would have been sooner if I used the Kage Bushin no Jutsu, but Revan-sensei told me that there was no shortcuts to real power. Kyuubi damn near fainted when she heard that Naruto completed the meditation exercise just 5 hours after starting and without the aid of his shadow clones. She pondered this new revelation for a moment before she came up with a great plan. Since I am not very adept at using the Force and you have 2 legends teaching you about it, I have a plan to maximize your training potential. Kyuubi said as Naruto perked up instantly at the word, training. When you are awake you will train in chakra control exercise as well as taijutsu since your hand-to-hand is almost non-existent. When you are asleep, you will spend the first 4 hours with me learning about ninjutsu, genjutsu as well as some other ninja and demon skills. The next 4 will be spent with Revan and Galen in controlling the Force. Sounds like a great plan, Q-chan, but how am I going to cover up my growth as well as my skills? Well, Kit, why don't you just send a reinforced Kage Bushin to take your place at the academy every day so you can maximize the time for training that you have? Have the Kage Bushin act like the old you as well as have the skills you had before. Kyuubi suggested, which caused Naruto to almost facefo at the simplicity of the answer. Once class had ended, Naruto bolted right out the door of the classroom so he could begin his training as soon as possible. Naruto ran until he found an empty training ground that looked like it has hardly been used by anyone. After a few laps around the training ground to warm up, Naruto asked Kyuubi what he should start on first. Well, Kit, since you have an enormous pool of chakra at your disposal, this would make your chakra control pretty much up, so I would recommend you start on chakra control exercises first. Kyuubi replied as she thought about it some more. The first exercise is tree walking. You have to channel the correct amount of chakra into your foot so you will stick to the surface of the tree. Too much and you will blast off, but too little and your foot will slide off, so it's all a matter of finding the correct amount. Alright, Kyuubi-sensei, I'm going to begin training now. Naruto thought as he formed the familiar cross-shaped hand seal and shouted out. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Several hundred poofs resonated around the training ground as 300 Narutos appeared around him. Naruto looked slightly winded but was otherwise fine. Alright troops, I want 200 of you to work on the tree climbing exercise, and when one of you manages to make it at least halfway up I want you to dispel. The other 100 I want to spar with one another, with your eyes closed so we can get the hang of listening to our Force senses. Now get to it, Naruto ordered as his clones snapped off a, "Hi boss," before setting off to their respective tasks while Naruto himself started with his physical training to build up his muscles. He spent the entire afternoon doing physical exercises from running laps around the training grounds to sit-ups, push-ups and chin-ups. Eventually the sun started to set and Naruto was completely exhausted. You could see the labored breathing of the young boy as he lay flat down in the middle of the field. With a mental command, Naruto carefully dismissed his clones in groups of 25s every 25 seconds so he wouldn't suffer any backlash. Gathering up his remaining energy, Naruto placed one foot on the trunk of a nearby tree before taking another step up and then another, which was followed by another. Before he knew it, he was at the top of the tree overlooking the entire training ground. Naruto gave a small smile at his accomplishment before carefully navigating his way down the tree and trudged back to his apartment for his nightly training. Mindscape. Good job today, Kit. You completely mastered the tree walking exercise in one day. That's something you can be proud of. Now it's time for ninjutsu theory. Kyuubi praised him before getting down to business. Tell me, what are the 5 main chakra natures that your chakra can have an affinity to? Well, sensei, I have seen a bunch of ninjutsu techniques before, so I would say there would be fire, earth and water. I'm not sure what the other 2 natures are though. Naruto said in a depressed tone, thinking he had failed his sensei. No need to be sad, Kit. I don't expect you to know all these things yet. Now you were right for those 3 elements, the other 2 would be wind and lightning. Kyuubi smiled at Naruto, who was listening attentively. Fire is an offensive element, earth is mainly defensive but can be offensive as well. Water is a balanced element with both offensive and defensive techniques, while wind and lightning are primarily offensive as well, though wind can be used as a defense in certain situations. I understand, sensei, but what element is my chakra aligned with? Naruto asked after listening to Kyuubi's explanation. From what I have observed from your chakra, you seem to have a godly affinity towards wind, but to make sure, I suggest you steal some chakra paper from your Hokage tomorrow. Chakra paper is a special type of paper that channels your chakra and tells you what element you have an affinity to. If it is fire, it will burn. Water, and it will turn soggy. Wind causes it to split in half, earth causes it to turn to dust, while lightning causes it to crumple up. So what are we going to be doing now, Kyuubi-sensei? Well, Kit, since we don't know your chakra affinity yet, I guess I will be teaching you how to use killing intent, ki, to aid you in your battles. Killing intent can do anything from causing your enemy to hesitate for a second to causing total fear-induced paralysis. Right now you won't be able to summon much due to your age, but will be able to do so when you are older. Kyuubi explained as she flicked his forehead, causing him to pout cutely. You can summon your ki just by thinking about something that makes you very angry and direct it at your opponent via your eyes, or you can release it over a wide area. Now I want you to try. Naruto had no trouble doing so as he remembered all the harsh words, the angry glares, and being kicked out of almost every shop. Kyuubi nodded in approval as she sensed a small dose of ki leaking out from Naruto. That's good enough, Kit. You can stop now, she told him, but Naruto seemed unresponsive. Every birthday they come together to chase me, and when they catch me they start to beat me. Why do they do that? Why doesn't anyone stop it? No more. Never again. Next time it happens, I will crush them. Naruto roared in his mind as a huge blast of ki shot out from him in multiple waves. It was so strong it even caused Kyuubi to stumble a bit. Kit, stop. Kit. Naruto. There's no one here that is going to hurt you. Kyuubi shouted as she hugged the young boy to herself and calmly stroking his hair. Calm down, Naruto. Nobody is going to hurt you anymore. I promise I will protect you, okay? I will never leave you. This seemed to work as the killing intent seemed to disappear as Naruto cried into her shoulder as she continued whispering comforting words into his ears until he stopped crying. Arigato, Q-chan. Sorry I let it get out of hand like that. Naruto apologized as he wiped away his remaining tears, causing Kyuubi to give a small smile. It wasn't your fault, Kit. I shouldn't have let you relive those bad memories. I'll spend the rest of the time here teaching you about your mother and father. Come and sit here. Kyuubi motioned for him to sit beside her, and Naruto complied as she began to tell him about his parents. 4 hours later. Remember, Kit, if you have any questions regarding your parents, just ask me and I will answer as best as I can. Now go meet up with your other 2 teachers, I believe they are expecting you. Kyuubi told him as he nodded and faded away. Naruto appeared in the familiar campsite where the 2 force users were already sitting there waiting for him. He walked over to them and sat down. Masters, what training do you have for me now? Today's exercise is for you to consciously levitate this rock with your force powers only. Just remember that the force flows through and around everything, including yourself. Learn to harmonize with it and you will be able to bend it to your will. Imagine the rock floating and it will do so. Revan demonstrated as he motioned with just one finger, and a tree trunk the size of Naruto shot off into the forest. You will need to use your whole hand at first. With training comes experience, and then you will be able to perform it like Revan or I can. Galen said as he too levitated a rock the size of an average human with 2 fingers before opening his other palm to show a rock the size of a snail. You will be using this for now. Naruto took the offered rock and sat down in his usual cross-legged position with the rock in his palm. He stared at the rock intently as he tried to imagine the force around it. Half an hour later we find Naruto still in the same position with the rock in his palm. Master, this is impossible. I concentrated like you said, but the damn thing won't budge. Naruto exclaimed in frustration, causing Revan to smirk under his mask. So much like me when I was learning to harness the force as well. He thought before speaking. Nothing is impossible before the force, young Naruto. Be patient and you will have the result you desire. Do not think that this is something that can be done in a snap of your fingers, it takes hard work to get it done. Hi, I understand, master, Naruto said as he went back to the task at hand. Okay, imagine the force flowing in and around you like a strong river flow, get the feel of it and learn to move with it. The force is my ally, so I must flow along with it instead of pushing against the current. 2 hours later of repeating the mantra in his head, the rock in his palm seemed to wobble a bit to the left and then to the right before slowly lifting off his palm and into the air. Naruto smiled as both his teachers clapped at his accomplishment. Very good, Naruto, this is the first step for you to become a master of the force. Now I want you to do the same thing you did with the rock to this. Revan gestured to significantly larger rock the size of Naruto himself. Remember how you felt, and that size does not matter in the presence of the force. Naruto licked his lips as he once again submerged his entire self into the flow of the force as he felt it move around his body. He then directed it around the rock as he lifted his arm up slowly. The large rock shifted to the side slowly before hovering at least half a meter of the ground. Naruto panted as he let it drift back down slowly before slumping over from exhaustion. Revan and Galen smiled as Naruto gave them a thumbs up before he fainted. Revan turned towards Galen. He truly is one of a kind, don't you agree, Galen? He asked the younger looking of the two, who simply nodded his head. They sat there in silence as they observed the sleeping child on the ground in front of them. Naruto licked his lips as he once again submerged his entire self into the flow of the force as he felt it move around his body. He then directed it around the rock as he lifted his arm up slowly. The large rock shifted to the side slowly before hovering at least half a meter of the ground. Naruto panted as he let it drift back down slowly before slumping over from exhaustion. Revan and Galen smiled as Naruto gave them a thumbs up before he fainted. Revan turned towards Galen. He truly is one of a kind, don't you agree, Galen? He asked the younger looking of the two, who simply nodded his head. They sat there in silence as they observed the sleeping child on the ground in front of them. 3 years later. Ha ha ha, you'll never catch me, an orange-clad young boy shouted back at the team of masked Anbu members chasing him. Boy, by the orders of the Lord Hokage, we were ordered to bring you to him for painting the entire Hyuga estate neon pink in color. A bear-masked Anbu shouted back while snickers could be heard coming from the rest of the squad as they thought it was hilarious that someone managed to prank the all-seeing eyes of the Hyuga clan. Hey, they had it coming for a long time. Now leave me alone so I can go and get some ramen to eat. Naruto waved at them merrily as he seemed to speed up before colliding with a loud oof with somebody in front of him. After rubbing his head, Naruto looked up into the frowning visage of one Yumino Iruka. Hey Iruka-sensei, I was just, on my way to class. That's it, I was just on my way there when they started chasing me. Naruto, you aren't fooling anybody, so drop the charade and come along. Iruka chastised the boy as he dragged him away to class as the rest of the Anbu squad disappeared to inform the Hokage. None of them saw a shadow observing their every movement during the chase. The shadow moved and revealed the face of a grinning Naruto. You say that, Iruka-san, but you don't even notice that isn't the real me. Has standards for ninjas always been this low? He chuckled slightly as he threw a hood over his head to obscure his face from the public. Naru-kun, you should know that not everyone has such advanced senses as yours and only you have force powers. Kyuubi's voice echoed through his head. I know Q-chan, but I thought an ex-Anbu such as Iruka-san would at least be better than this. Naruto retorted lightly as he stealthily made his way to the training grounds he had been using for the past 3 years. He ran through a series of hand seals before slamming both his palms onto the ground. Ninpu. Otofugen Shoheki no Jutsu. Ninja Art. Sound Silencing Barrier Technique. Alright Naru-kun, now that nobody can hear you, I want to see what you have learned so far over the past 3 years. Start off with ninja techniques before moving on to force techniques. Kyuubi told him. Whatever you say, Q-chan. Naruto cracked his neck before walking on top of the water of a nearby stream whilst balancing a kunai on each fingertip and rotating them in a clockwise direction. After a minute or so of doing that, he suddenly flung all the kunai into the air and quickly drew out 10 shuriken and flinging them all at once. 10 sparks appeared in the air signifying that all 10 shuriken had hit the 10 aerial kunai, causing them to alter their cause in midair and head towards Naruto. He just smirked as the kunai headed towards his body but suddenly veered off course when they came within half a meter of him. Futon. Fujin no Yoroi. Wind release. Armor of the wind god, Naruto whispered with a grin as the previously invisible wind armor phased into existence. The armor made it look like there was a mini hurricane over each of Naruto's limbs while numerous wind blades swirled around his form in a repetitive cycle. Naruto shivered slightly as he remembered just how many times he had injured himself when creating this particular jutsu. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. He shouted as 1,000 clouds of smoke appeared around the training grounds and drifted away, revealing 1,000 grinning Narutos. The clones charged at the original in groups of 2s to 3s as the original took on a strange taijutsu stance as he started to engage the oncoming clones. Naruto weaved in and around his opponent's attack as he used the force to sense incoming attacks, which he avoided with his ninja reflexes. Naruto started to counterattack with a barrage of punches and kicks made all the more deadly by the presence of the Fujin no Yoroi. A huge group of clones started to charge in from the east. Naruto sensed them easily and ran through several hand seals before taking a deep breath. Futon. Datapa. Wind release. Great breakthrough, he shot out a huge burst of air that slammed into the rushing clones and dispelled them instantly. The clones started attacking in larger groups as they tried to overwhelm their creator. Naruto sensed all of the remaining clones rushing towards him in a last-bit effort to disable him. Time to say goodbye, clones. Naruto tapped into the force as he felt it flow around him like a calm river. He started pulling all the force in the surrounding area towards him. This resulted in causing the charging clones to get yanked into a gravitational orbit around Naruto as he clenched his fists tightly before throwing his arms outward. Gekutai Sa Seru. Force repulse. The stored up force energy immediately blasted outward in a huge wave and blew back all the clones in a massive explosion of force energy. Naruto panted slightly from the sudden expenditure of the force. He grinned despite himself and stumbled back onto his. How's that for going all out? Naruto asked aloud, knowing Kyuubi would still be able to hear him. Very impressive, Naru-kun. Now I believe it is lunchtime and you should take a break after that spar. Kyuubi replied in a proud tone as Naruto nodded in agreement. He sprang back onto his feet and steadied himself for a few seconds before walking towards his home so he could cook himself something to eat. Naruto had realized that he could not live off ramen, so he decided to take up cooking as a pastime, and he found out that he was apparently very good at it. After a quiet lunch of rice and fish, Naruto sat down on the floor as he meditated to enter the Force Forest, as he had started to call it. Within the Force Forest. Hello there, young Naruto, I have been waiting for you. Revan smiled behind his mask at the confused look on the boy's face. Why were you waiting for me, Revan-sensei? And where is Galen-sensei? Naruto asked, puzzled. Galen is preoccupied with something. Naruto, during the past 3 years we have trained you in all we know, and as a reward for all your hard work and diligence, we both have something for you. Revan replied, causing Naruto's eyes to widen since he never received any form of present from his masters before. Ah, I sense that Galen is back with your gift. I, on the other hand, have 3 gifts for you. Revan announced as Galen walked into the campsite with something held behind his back. Would you like to go first, Galen? Alright, I believe that you have earned this, Naruto, for giving your all in training. Happy birthday. Galen said as he handed Naruto a cylindrical object with an engraved hilt. Naruto felt his eyes widen for 2 reasons, the first one being that he had forgotten today was his birthday. Second being that the object handed to him by his master was a lightsaber. He never thought he would own such a legendary weapon. Arigato, Galen-sensei. Naruto stammered out as he accepted the weapon into his hands. Galen gave him a nod to activate it, and he did so with a snap hiss of the blade. Naruto marveled at the pearl-white blade that emitted from the nozzle of the cylinder. The blade itself was white as snow with a black glow around it. It's beautiful, Master Galen. I will cherish it always. Come here, Naruto. It's time for my gifts. Revan beckoned him over with a gloved hand. Naruto obediently moved over as Revan too handed him a lightsaber. Naruto took it into his hands and ignited it with another, snap hiss. The blade this time was black as midnight with a menacing red glow about it. It seemed to scream danger to anyone who saw it. It's amazing as well, Master Revan. I will guard it with my life. Naruto bowed as Revan pet his head. Naruto, the next two gifts are linked to one another. I want you to wear my armor and take my name when I am gone. Revan crouched in front of Naruto as he looked him from eye to visor. Promise me, Naruto. But where are you going to? Naruto asked uncertainly as Revan and Galen shared a sad glance before sighing and turning back to Naruto. We are finally going to join our family and friends as one in the unifying force. Naruto started to tear up as he let out a soft sob as he didn't expect the two men who had trained him from 3 years ago to be gone from his life so suddenly. Revan and Galen brought him into a three-way hug as they comforted the boy they had begun to see as a younger brother. I know it's hard, Naruto, but we have delayed ourselves long enough, and in the end we are all a part of the Force, so I want you to promise me, Naruto, take my armor and continue my legacy. Revan told him softly as Naruto wiped away his tears and nodded once. I promise, Revan-sensei. I will miss you guys a lot, Naruto admitted as the two men had similar smiles, though you could not see Revan's one. Goodbye, Naruto, and may the Force be with you. They said in unison as their bodies seemed to fade away into blue particles that swirled around Naruto once before floating away into the forest. Naruto just stood there as he felt a sudden surge in his force power before he too faded out from the force forest for the last time. Mindscape. Kyuubi was lying on her bed reading a random book Naruto had generated inside of the mindscape. Apparently Naruto had turned the sewer-like place into a 2-story house around 2 years ago. The book was about a knight who battled against numerous monsters and demons to regain his honor and ended with him succeeding the current ruler of the kingdom and marrying the princess before living happily ever after. Where's my happily ever after? Am I just a demon for someone to kill so they can marry a princess? Kyuubi thought as she sighed before flinging the book into the corner of the room. Wow, what's wrong with the book? A familiar voice called out as she turned her head and saw an amused-looking Naruto holding up the book she had thrown. Overused plotline, Kyuubi joked with a small smile before she seemed to notice the somber aura around Naruto. Hey, what happened? Revan-sensei and Galen-sensei have gone on to join the Force. He finally said as his voice cracked as tears threatened his vision once again. I promised Revan-sensei that I would continue his legacy, and I intend to do so. They must have taught you everything they knew already and believed you would advance from there on your own 2 feet. Kyuubi reasoned as Naruto nodded and sniffed while he wiped away the moisture from his eyes. I guess you're right, Q-chan. Naruto sighed as he fiddled with the switch of his lightsaber, catching Kyuubi's interest. They left you a lightsaber. 2 lightsabers, one from each of them. Naruto corrected as he thumbed both of them to life. 1 blackish-white blade and 1 reddish-black blade. Naruto swung them in a few basic strokes while Kyuubi watched the deadly light show the blades seemed to weave. He eventually thumbed them off as he slumped onto the bed. You must miss them already. Kyuubi voiced his thoughts aloud as she pulled him into a hug as the tears he held back started to fall as his shoulders shook with every gasp of air he took. I can't believe they're gone. He cried onto Kyuubi's shoulder as she rubbed his back soothingly until the tears finally died down as he brought himself back under control. Thanks, Q-chan. Anytime, Naru-kun. It's normal to hurt when you lose someone that is precious to you. Kyuubi released him from her hold as she unconsciously noted that she had felt complete with Naruto in her arms. Promise me you won't leave me, Q-chan. I don't think I would be able to continue on if I lost you too. He admitted as he looked at the demoness beside him, who flicked him on the forehead with 2 fingers. Baka, didn't I promise you that I would never leave you? Why don't you meditate? It looks like you could use it to clear the depressing thoughts from your mind. Kyuubi suggested. I think so too. Naruto went into the lotus position as he closed his eyes, once again clearing his mind of all thoughts and synchronized with the force flow around him. He could sense the presence of Kyuubi beside him before spreading out his awareness across the entire village when he was suddenly hit with a powerful jolt in the force. Naruto's eyes snapped wide open as he clutched his chest with his hand, causing Kyuubi to look at him worried. I sense a disturbance in the force. It sounded like multiple cries of terror before they suddenly vanished from the force altogether. He said in a disturbed tone before fading from the mindscape and appearing back in his apartment. He saw a storage scroll in his lap that wasn't there before. He quickly unsealed it to reveal his two lightsabers and a modified version of Revan's armor and cloak. In a split-second decision, Naruto decided this would be a good time for the legend of Darth Revan to make itself known once more. He tore off his clothes in a second and started to don the armor of his deceased mentor. He stood in front of a mirror and for a moment he thought he was looking at his mentor. Due to all the physical training Naruto had been doing for the past 3 years, he now stood at an impressive 1.6 meters for his age and was built solidly but not overly so. The armor's color scheme seemed to have been altered since the plates were now completely black with red trims and the visor was now a glaring crimson. Damn, I look cool. Now I know why Revan-sensei always chose to wear his armor around all the time, either that or the fact he didn't have any clothes under it. Naruto thought before he threw the black hood of his cloak over his helmeted head and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Uchiha District. Sasuke had a smile on his face as he raced back home after the academy had ended. He had aced his test and couldn't wait to tell his parents and Itachi. He cheerfully greeted the Pocky store owner on his way back. He never knew what his brother found so enjoyable about the snack. As he rounded the corner leading to the clan grounds, he paused as he sensed that something wasn't right. His smile vanished as he increased his speed to his home. Why do I smell blood coming from the direction of the clan grounds, and is that sulfur? Sasuke thought as he ran through the clan gates and was greeted by the horrific sight of bloodied and cut-up bodies of various clan members lying on the ground. What the hell is going on? Sasuke started to panic as he tried to process the images in his mind before running off in the direction of his home, hoping that nothing had befallen his parents or sibling. Foolish boy. Mikoto tried to scream as her recently deceased body of her husband slumped to the floor in front of her, but not a single sound escaped from her lips. She watched on horrified as she stared into the familiar eyes of her eldest son as he advanced on her with his sword poised to strike. What are you doing, Itachi? Why are you doing this? She finally managed to scream out as Itachi closed his eyes with a sigh and raised his tanto. Sorry, Ka-san. With that, Itachi swung his blade in a sweeping arc, expecting the familiar sound of steel cutting through flesh. Instead, what he got was the sound of steel impacting against steel. He opened his eyes to see a crimson visor staring right back at him. What do you think you're doing? The armor-wearing individual asked in a metallic voice. His right hand was outstretched and had blocked his blade with his gauntlet. Get out of my way. This matter does not concern you, stranger. Itachi replied in his usual monotone voice as he tried to assess the threat level of the newcomer. It became my business when I see you trying to harm such a beautiful woman. The figure countered lightly as Mikoto felt her cheeks heat up despite the situation. Very well then, I shall just dispose of you and finish the job later. Itachi jumped backward to create some distance before blurring out of existence and reappearing behind the individual. He went for sweeping side slash at neck height. The figure just blocked it with his left gauntlet before swiftly spinning around and placing his palm against Itachi's stomach. Ketone. Chikara no Pushu. Force release. Force push, the metallic voice whispered as Itachi suddenly flew backwards due to an unknown force that emitted from his opponent's palm. Ketone. Itachi thought in confusion as he hacked up a mouthful of blood. He was suddenly assaulted by the memories of a clone he had ordered to patrol the grounds for any survivors. Clone memories. The clone jumped on top of a pole to better view the area. He immediately spotted the running form of his little brother. He knew he couldn't kill his brother as he loved him too much, so he thought of a plan to give his brother some motivation to get stronger. Sasuke ran through the blood-soaked streets as he hurried to his house when suddenly his brother appeared in front of him. Just as he was about to hug him, Sasuke noticed that Itachi was dressed in his Anbu uniform and his tanto was covered with fresh blood. Aniki, what did you do? Sasuke asked in confusion. Itachi's clone just looked at him with indifference before examining the blood-covered blade of his tanto. Just killing this sorry excuse for a clan. What? Why are you doing this? Sasuke shouted in outrage. To test the limits of my power. Nothing more, nothing less, Itachi replied simply as he looked Sasuke in the eyes. I won't kill you today or tomorrow or even next week, but I will come for you eventually. So run, foolish little brother, and cling on to your pathetic existence, hate me and use that hatred to grow stronger. Why, Aniki, why? Sasuke whispered as he looked into Itachi's eyes that suddenly changed into a tri-bladed shuriken. Because I simply can, Tsukuyomi. Moon Reader, Sasuke heard Itachi say before his world suddenly vanished and he found himself in a black and red world. Welcome to my world, little brother. In here I control everything including time. For the next 72 hours you will watch me slaughter the clan and our parents repeatedly. Itachi's clone watched as Sasuke screamed and curled up into a ball after 3 seconds. Damn, I used up my remaining chakra using Tsukuyomi. Back to present. So that's what my clone did. Never mind that. I have to focus on this battle, although almost half my chakra went into that clone. Itachi thought as he wiped the blood from his lips and stood back up. Why don't you just leave, Itachi-san? I don't feel like hurting one of the few people who actually bothered to save me from the mobs when I was young. The figure suddenly said, causing Itachi's eyes to widen comically. This guy is Naruto. When did he get so strong? Looks like I can't finish the mission. Itachi sheathed his tanto and looked at Naruto directly. I can sense the Hokage and Anbu coming already, so I guess you win this round, Naruto-kun. Itachi smiled slightly before leaving via a quick shunshin, leaving behind an amused Naruto and a gaping Mikoto. This person who defeated Itachi, an Anbu captain at age 13, is none other than Uzumaki Naruto. Mikoto thought as Naruto sighed and threw back his hood before removing his helmet. Mikoto blushed as she saw the angular face and wavy blonde hair that was slightly matted down due to sweat. Without the whisker marks he would look like a carbon copy of Minato. Naruto turned and looked at Mikoto before glancing at the corpse of Fugaku. He crouched down beside her and checked her for injuries. Areo injured in any way? No. You arrived just in time, arigato for saving me. Mikoto smiled slightly as Naruto just chuckled and replaced his helmet and hood. No problem, how could I stand by and watch someone scar this beautiful face? Now I must be off as reinforcements are coming in if they ask who saved you. Naruto looked her in the eye with his crimson visor. Tell them, Darth Revan did. Naruto then vanished into the shadows of the house as Mikoto could still feel the blush on her face at the compliment regarding her beauty. Not a minute later, Hiruzen and 2 full squads of Anbu arrived at the scene. Mikoto-san, what happened here? Hiruzen asked softly as he believed the woman to be traumatized by the death of her husband, but in reality Mikoto had been in an arranged marriage and never really loved Fugaku. Itachi just appeared out of nowhere and started attacking us. He managed to wound Fugaku severely before killing him. He was about to kill me when someone saved me. Mikoto trailed off as she remembered Naruto single-handedly holding off Itachi. Can you describe your savior, and did he tell you his name? Hiruzen asked politely while inwardly thinking. Who would be able to hold off Itachi-kun until we arrived? He wore red-trimmed black armor with a helmet and a cloak with a hood. As for his name, Darth Revan. Mikoto decided to honor her savior's wish to remain unknown. I see. Well, Mikoto-san, I think you would be glad to hear that we found Sasuke still alive. He began, causing Mikoto to brighten up considerably. Unfortunately, I think Itachi got to him and did something to his mind because he kept muttering something about hatred and avenging the clan. Oh no, my poor baby. Please take me to him right now, Hokage-sama. Mikoto cried out but thought about something as well. Since Itachi was fighting Naruto-kun the entire time, that means it was a clone, but that would mean Itachi wasn't at his full strength. Especially since he had just killed the rest of the clan. Wait, Naruto-kun. Where did that come from? With Naruto, Darth Revan. Naruto crouched in the shadow of a nearby tree using a technique he had learned from Kyuubi to mask his chakra presence so people wouldn't be able to sense him easily. He watched as the Anbu escorted a worried-looking Mikoto to the hospital for a checkup as well as to find her son. At least I was fast enough to save her, Naruto thought with a sigh as he leapt away from the scene with a force-enhanced jump. Why did you call her beautiful? Came Kyuubi's question, which caught Naruto off guard and almost caused him to smack face first into the next building. Why the heck did you suddenly ask that? He replied after he saved himself from a humiliating and painful experience. Just answer the question, she snapped, causing Naruto to blink. If he had learned one thing about Kyuubi, it was that she never snapped at him even during training. I was complimenting her, she does look beautiful despite her age. Naruto decided to humor her and answer. And I don't, she said quietly, causing Naruto to gain a look of understanding. Q-chan, are you jealous? He asked in surprise as he never took the red-haired demoness to be the jealous type. No, I was just wondering why you didn't tell me stuff like that. Q-chan, I never said that to you, not because I don't think you aren't beautiful but because I can't find the words to even begin describing your beauty. Naruto answered honestly, causing her to blush uncontrollably while thanking the gods that she was in the mindscape so Naruto couldn't see it. Ah, thanks Naru-kun. Anytime, Q-chan. A month had passed since the Uchiha massacre. The Sandaime Hokage had put out a notice informing all ninjas to keep a lookout for a person matching Darth Revan's description. However, the ever-elusive Revan kept managing to leave the scene before any ninja forces could arrive. It's as if this Revan character could sense us coming from a mile away, but if that is so, then he has to be an excellent tracker ninja or the very least an expert Byakugan user. Hiruzen thought as he puffed on his pipe. At any rate, at least he is foiling all this rape, murder and kidnapping attempts from the less savory side of Konoha's population. Hokage-sama, there is a Terumi Mei out here requesting permission to speak with you. She claims it's about something of great importance. His secretary's voice interrupted his thoughts. Send her in. Hiruzen replied before a beautiful teenage girl with long auburn hair walked into his office. He tried his hardest not to let his perverted side surface and coughed to regain some composure. Well, Terumi-san, what could you have to say to me that could be of so much importance? Hokage-sama, I am the current leader of the bloodline rebels in Kiri. Mei bowed slightly and sighed internally at the look of disbelief on the old man's face. I assure you that I am not joking. I was elected leader due to my dual bloodlines. I have the ability to combine my elements into sub-elements, which in my case would be fire and earth to create Yoden, lava release, and fire and water to create Futen, boil release. Most impressive for someone your age, so what have you come to ask of me, Terumi-san? Hiruzen asked as he took another puff of his pipe. I have come on the behalf of the Kiri rebels to plead our cause to you since Konoha respects their bloodlines. We hope that you would be so kind as to send some reinforcements to aid us in defeating the current Mizukage, Sanbi no Yugura, Yugura of the Three Tails. Mei stated plainly without any beating around the bush. Hiruzen tapped his pipe as he seemed to be lost in thought and looked at the portraits of the former Hokages on the wall. What would you guys do, senseis, Minato? He thought as he turned back to an expectant Mei and sighed heavily, knowing his duty outweighed his conscience. I'm sorry, Terumi-san, but for the sake of my village I cannot participate in this conflict. You must see it from my point of view, for if I help you and you still lose, then Kiri would be an enemy to us. Do you understand? Hi, I understand perfectly, Hokage-sama. Mei said softly with disappointment evident in her tone as she turned around and walked out of the office. The Sandaime sighed as he shook his head before going back to the paperwork that had suddenly appeared on his desk. Unknown to both of them, there was actually a third party listening in on their conversation. Looks like I'm going on a road trip. I heard that Kiri is nice this time of year. The shadow said as it vanished the next second. Streets of Konoha. Mei sighed dejectedly once again as she walked down the street. She had wasted her precious time coming to Konoha for no reason. The lecherous looks from the male population of the village weren't helping her mood either, and she couldn't threaten them since this wasn't her village. Stupid old monkey not helping us in the war. not even bothering to check the situation before giving his answer. When we win the war, I'm so not allying with Konoha if he is still their leader. Mei thought to herself but was startled out of her thoughts when a voice called out to her from an alleyway. Mei turned her head in confusion as she spotted a cloaked figure beckoning to her. She followed him, her as she could handle herself if this was a trap. Mei-san, I heard that you might require aid in your rebellion against your village's current leader. The voice that came out of the cloak had a strange metallic quality to it, but she could recognize it as a male's. I might. What's it to you? Mei asked cautiously. I believe my services would be beneficial in your inter-village conflict. Listen to me before you go criticizing my skills that you do not know of. The figure replied. Isn't better to have someone help you rather than no one at all? Mei seemed to think hard about this before looking into the shadows of the hood. At least show me your face and tell me your name first. Very well, Mei-chan. The voice answered with a hint of mirth to it, causing Mei to flush slightly at the suffix. The figure threw back his cloak to reveal a black helmet with a crimson visor and trims. Mei stared at it fascinated until the figure spoke again. As for my name, you may call me Darth Revan. Darth Revan, Mei repeated as if testing the name on her tongue, before she smirked at him and replied with a wink. Well, Revan-kun, meet me at the gates this evening and we will head to Kiri. Naruto felt the heat rush to his cheeks at her actions before having to stifle a nosebleed that threatened to come out when he saw that she was purposely swaying her hips as she walked away. Nobody can out-flirt Terumi Mei, he. Mei chuckled inwardly as she continued walking away. What a hussy. Kyuubi injected into the situation as Naruto shook his head and sighed. Q-chan, what did I tell you about getting jealous? I am not jealous, damn it. Kyuubi roared in his brain, causing him a slight migraine. Alright, you're not jealous, sheesh, you didn't have to shout so loud. Naruto groaned in his mind as he held his head slightly, causing Kyuubi to pout in his mind. You started it, you meanie. You know you will always be the most beautiful person to me, Q-chan. Naruto comforted her as the demoness blushed at the statement. Oh, of course I know you, baka. She replied heatedly to cover up her embarrassment, causing Naruto to sniffle and wipe a fake tear from his eye. Naruto just wanted to make Q-chan happy, but Q-chan called Naruto a baka. Naruto thinks Q-chan hates Naruto. Naruto wailed childishly. Baka, get serious. Don't forget you have to meet that lady at the gate in 2 hours' time, so I recommend you get some supplies for your trip. Kyuubi gave him a mental bonk on the head. Itai. Naruto thought as he clutched his head in mock pain. Don't hurt Naruto anymore, Q-chan. Naruto is going to get the supplies because Naruto is a good boy. He couldn't resist the Toby reference. 2 hours later, Mei stood at the gate with her escort. She glanced at the position of the setting sun. Terumi-sama, we should head out soon if we want to make it to Kiri by tomorrow morning. Her escort said as she looked around the village entrance trying to spot someone. There is no rush. I trust that Ao is competent enough to run operations when I am not there. Where is he? Mei added the last part under her own breath. Where's who? The same metallic voice replied from beside her. She turned her head and saw the cloaked individual standing beside her with his head to the side in a cute pose. Terumi-sama, I thought you said that the Hokage didn't send us any aid. The escort asked in confusion at seeing the slightly creepy cloaked figure standing there. This is Darth Revan and he has offered us his aid in dealing with Yagura's forces. Mei introduced Naruto, who just nodded his head slightly in greeting. Is one man going to make that much of a difference in the war? The escort asked in clear disbelief. Mei noticed Naruto made a slight gesture with his hand as he spoke. My skills are enough to turn the tide of this war. Naruto told the escort as the escort seemed to blink a few times before turning around and walking out the village. His skills are enough to turn the tide of the war, so we should head back now to Terumi-sama. The escort seemed to repeat the exact words in a monotone voice, causing Mei to look between the escort and Naruto in confusion. Okay, I give up. What exactly did you do to him? Mei asked after several seconds. Oh, that is simply a... Naruto paused for dramatic tension as Mei leaned in slightly. Secret. May damn near face faulted when she heard that. In the end she just decided to stick with pouting, causing Naruto to chuckle in his metallic tone of Darth Revan. Do you know you look really cute when you pout like that, Mei-chan? He asked with a hidden grin, causing Mei to blush slightly before increasing her pace as she left Naruto behind. He payback's a bitch, Mei-chan. Several hours later. Terumi-sama, I think we should stop and set up camp here for the night since we won't be able to make it the rest of the way by tonight. The escort said as they dropped into a clearing in the middle of a forest. I guess you're right, we will set up the tents here for the night and leave first thing tomorrow morning. Mei stated before looking at Naruto, who was giving off a sheepish aura as he scratched his cloaked head. What is it, Revan-kun? I kind of had forgotten to bring my tent since I haven't traveled this far outside my village before, he replied with a nervous laugh while Mei had a gleam in her eye. Ooh, payback time, she thought with an inward snicker before looking at Naruto. Revan. Well, since you don't have one, then you could share mine. Mei trailed off suggestively, causing her escort to splutter incoherently until Naruto did the hand wave gesture again. You have no problems with us sharing a tent? Naruto muttered under his breath as the escort repeated the same words and went back to setting up the tents. Mei looked on dumbfounded as she watched this exchange since she didn't expect him to actually accept her proposal. Naruto had another unseen grin on his face. Mei-chan, don't we have to get started on our tent? Huh, oh right. Mei blushed heavily as she helped Revan, Naruto set up their tent and they entered it together once it was up. Naruto took off his helmet with a hiss of air escaping and shook his sweat-matted down hair back into its original spiky position. He stiffened when he heard a gasp from behind him. God damn it, I totally forgot we were sharing a tent. Naruto groaned in his mind before turning around to address the situation at hand. Wow, who knew he was this hot under that helmet? Mei thought with a blush when Naruto turned around and couldn't help but study his handsome visage. Well, this is my true face, Naruto sighed as Mei looked at him with a puzzled expression that Naruto thought looked cute on her. Why do you wear a helmet that covers your entire face when there are no deformities for it to cover up? She asked him, causing Naruto to sigh as he knew there was no backing out now. My real name is Uzumaki Naruto and I am the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Yes, the same Kyuubi that attacked around 8 years ago. The Yondaime couldn't defeat it, so he resealed it into me. The villagers hate my guts for containing the Kyuubi, so they regularly beat me for that. I wear the mask so that they won't recognize me, and as a promise to a friend passed on. To suffer so much and still retain your sanity, wait a minute. You are only 8 years old. Mei suddenly exclaimed, causing Naruto to chuckle and scratch his head. My appearance is a side effect of all my physical training for the past 3 years and accelerated growth due to containing Q-chan inside me. Q-chan? Mei voiced out, confused. Oh, the Kyuubi is a she and is actually very nice when you get to know her, and she only attacked on that night due to a genjutsu-influenced bloodlust. Naruto replied simply while Mei just blinked 3 times to process the information before pointing at the sky. Ha! Take that, you stupid bastards. The strongest tailed demon is female. She shouted suddenly, causing Naruto to sweat drop. I think I was wrong about her, Naru-kun. She and I are going to get along really well, Kyuubi mused in his mind, causing Naruto to sigh. Well, Mei-chan, I guess that's it for an explanation. Now let's turn in for the night since we have another long day ahead tomorrow. He said with a yawn to emphasize his statement. Sure, Revan-kun. Good night. Mei chirped with amusement in her voice. Night, Mei-chan. Naruto murmured as he fell asleep almost instantly. Next morning, sunlight streamed through the small gap in the entrance of the tent, causing both occupants to groan and wake up at the same time. And they awoke in a rather interesting position. Mei had sometime during the night rolled on top of Naruto's sleeping form and snuggled into his chest while Naruto had one hand over her in a protective fashion. Their other hands were in more interesting circumstances. Mei's right hand had somehow wormed its beneath the waistband of the front of Naruto's pants, while Naruto's right hand was beneath the waistband of the back of Mei's pants. After 3 awkward seconds of looking at their hands then each other, the hands were quickly retracted by their respective owners. I didn't mean for that to happen, Naruto blushed madly as he apologized whilst thinking. Damn, she has a soft yet firm. Me too, it must have happened when we were sleeping, May replied with a similar blush on her face whilst thinking. Dear Cammy, he's only 8 years old and I estimated that he is already 6 inches. Breakfast made for an awkward ordeal as the escort looked at the pair in confusion, since whenever one of them caught the eye of the other, both would turn away immediately with blushes on their respective faces. After finishing their breakfast, Naruto and May agreed never to bring up that memory again, or at least in the presence of company. I believe that if we went by yesterday's pace, we would arrive in Mizu no Kuni, Land of Water, by mid-afternoon. The escort said as May and Naruto nodded in agreement before moving off in the direction of Kiri. Naruto was conversing with Kyuubi mentally about the so-called Sanbi no Yagura, the current leader of Kiri. Last I heard about the Sanbi was when Kushina overheard Minato discussing with his advisors about Kiri sealing the Sanbi into some baby by their leader at the time. Kyuubi growled at the thought of Kiri sealing the Sanbi just to be used as a weapon. Was the Sanbi attacking their village at that time? Naruto asked mentally as he continued moving despite the inner conversation he was having. That's the thing. Sanbi-chan was one of the gentlest of us all and wouldn't harm a living thing without good reason, yet the damn Mizukage at that time sealed her just to make a weapon for his village. Good thing he died soon after the sealing, the world doesn't need trash like that. She snarled in reply, causing Naruto to frown slightly. As someone who bears the similar burden of being a Jinchuriki, why did he suddenly start the bloodline purges out of the blue when it was obvious that bloodlines make the village stronger? The thought has been bugging me as well. There are 2 logical answers to that. 1. He has gone completely batshit insane. 2. Which is more likely, that someone is controlling or manipulating his actions. Kyuubi stated as Naruto seemed to believe it as well. Mid-afternoon. The group of 3 had just arrived at the location of the rebel base in Mizu no Kuni. The escort had left to perform other duties while Naruto just followed May as she walked towards the command center. She strode in through the swing doors with the aura of a leader around her as the people inside immediately snapped to attention and a man with an eye patch stepped forward. How was things here while I was gone, Ao? May asked the man. We are still holding our ground, May, but we won't be able to for much longer if we don't get reinforcements and supplies. By the way, who is he? Ao jerked his thumb in the direction of Naruto, who was leaning against a wall as he observed the 2 talk. His name is Darth Revan and he offered us his help despite his village turning us down. Revan, this is Ao. He's my second in command and an old friend of mine. May introduced the 2 and they shook hands. Revan-san, I don't care that you are the only person that came, but just for doing that, you went up a few places in my books. Ao said with a slight grin. Glad to be of service, Ao, but please just call me Revan, the san suffix makes me feel old. Naruto could feel Ao's curiosity increase at this answer, but he kept silent, to which May gave an inward sigh of relief. May, now that you're back, what are your orders? Ao asked as May looked at the tactical map on the mission table. Her eyes scanned the entire map in a minute. You said that one of our main problems is the lack of supplies for our troops, right? May looked at Ao for confirmation, to which he nodded yes in reply. Then this will be our next target, Shuryu Mainstream Village. It is situated next to the largest river in Mizu no Kuni and the grounds around it are used for farming. With that, our issue with supplies will be solved. Unfortunately, that piece of real estate is owned by our enemy, so we will have to take it by force. Sounds like my kind of job. Naruto grinned beneath his helmet as he walked over to the map and looked over it as well. There, this narrow passageway. He pointed at a small path between 2 vertical cliff faces. The path was only wide enough for 8 men to walk side by side. If you can get your men to lure their men through this pathway, then I will handle the rest. What exactly could you accomplish by having my men run through a narrow corridor with the enemy directly behind them? May asked suspiciously. Why, I'm going to wipe out their entire force. Naruto replied, simply causing everyone in the room to look at him as if he were crazy. Just trust me, I know what I'm doing. Alright, I'll trust you. May said after a few seconds. Ow. I want 3 Junin teams briefed on this mission and tell them to respond to Darth Revan's orders. Are you sure, May? Ow asked, but the look May had when she looked at him sent a shiver up his spine. Ow. Shut up or I'll kill you. She replied with a sickly sweet smile on her face. Yes, ma'am, I'll go round them up right away. Ow hurried off as he muttered under his breath. What did I say? I'll prove that your trust in me isn't misplaced, Mei-chan. Naruto promised as he and Mei left the room. It better not be or I will melt your balls off, Naru-kun. Mei answered in the same sickly sweet tone she used with Ao as a shiver went up Naruto's spine as well. Meanwhile in Konoha, Mikoto sighed as she watched her son arrive home after the academy only to head to their clan's training grounds immediately afterward. Once he had recovered from his ordeal, Sasuke had turned from the happy kid he was into an ego-driven brat that only lived to serve the purpose of killing his brother and avenging the clan. Instead of a cheerful greeting and a hug when he returned home, all she got now was a grunt that signified that he was heading to the training grounds. I want my baby boy back, Mikoto thought in sadness. I wonder how Naruto-kun is doing. Will he ever forgive me for not helping him despite the fact that I was his mother's best friend? A knock on the door interrupted her train of thoughts. She opened the door and sighed inwardly. It was another ninja that was trying to ask her out on a date. Why couldn't they take a hint and stop bothering her? Mikoto-sama, my name is Mizuki and I was wondering if you wanted to get some dinner with me. The silver-haired Chunin instructor asked. Mizuki-san, how many times have I told you that I am not interested and that I am still recovering mentally from the massacre of my clan by my son? Mikoto placed emphasis on the last word. She was tired of this guy since he had asked her out around 4 times in the past month. She closed the door in his face as she went back into the house to make dinner as she knew Sasuke would stride back into the house around evening and demand food. How dare that bitch turn down my offer not once but 4 times in the past month. Mizuki fumed mentally as he walked back to his apartment before an idea popped into his head. He, just you wait, Mikoto-chan. Soon you will be mine. Mizuki started to whistle happily as he increased his pace back home since he needed time to draft the speech he was going to give the council. Back in Rebel Base, Naruto stood with his arms crossed as he observed the 9 bloodline-wielding Junin standing in front of him, all of which were staring at the imposing figure of the black and red armored individual who was to be their mission leader. As you have been briefed by Ao, my name is Darth Revan. You have been told to follow my orders and I want any of you who are unsatisfied to voice it out right now. Naruto's metallic voice rang out through the room. Hell yeah, I got a problem. Why do we have to follow your orders? You just popped out of nowhere and we don't even know what abilities you have. A recently promoted Junin shouted. Naruto noted he had the distinct characteristics of the Hazuka family. Naruto merely raised his hand in a choking motion and the Junin immediately felt his windpipe start to constrict. He grasped at his throat as if trying to pry off the invisible hands around his neck. Just as he was about to pass out, Naruto dropped his hand and the guy fell onto the floor gasping for air like a half-drowned man. Anybody else want to question me? He asked darkly as the rest of the Junins shook their head quickly, clearly not wanting to experience whatever he had used on the rookie. Excellent. I believe you have been briefed on the plan, so I expect to see you all up and ready by the time the sun is rising. The gathered Junins dispersed to begin their mission preparations, leaving Naruto with the still recovering rookie. Naruto sighed softly as the guy flinched when he had placed a hand on his shoulder and hauled him to his feet. What's your name? Naruto asked simply. Hazuka Kenjutsu, sir. Kenjutsu added as an afterthought. You don't have to call me that when we aren't on the battlefield, Ken. Mind if I call you that? Naruto asked the bewildered Kenjutsu. Not really. My fellow shinobi call me that all the time, Kenjutsu replied in confusion. One moment he is all scary, then the next he is all buddy like, what the hell? Listen, Ken, what I did to you was just my way of making sure that everyone stayed in line. Your reasons were solid and would normally apply, but I am not normal. Naruto explained as he walked Kenjutsu through the base to his room. Tomorrow's mission isn't going to be easy and I am not going to say that it is, so I have to make sure there will be no insubordination before the actual mission occurs. This way I prevent unnecessary deaths on the mission due to conflicting orders. Do you understand where I am coming from? I guess I actually do understand now that you explained it. Kenjutsu stopped just outside his room and faced Naruto and held out a hand. Looking forward to what else you can do, Revan, and I guess I'm sorry about earlier. No need to apologize, Ken. You were just doing what any rational ninja would do in that situation, but as I said before, I'm not normal. Naruto chuckled as he walked off, leaving an amused Kenjutsu standing in the doorway to his room. My gut is telling me that he is going to be the one who changes the tide of this war and that he is destined for great things, Kenjutsu whispered as he walked back into his room and locked the door behind and plopped down onto his makeshift bed. And my gut has yet to fail me. Inspiring speech, Naru-kun. Kyuubi's voice echoed through Naruto's head as he paused momentarily before resuming his walk. I don't want their deaths to be on my mind. They're good people fighting for a good cause and I want as many of them to make it out the other side as possible. Naruto thought in reply. A noble thought, Naru-kun, but at the end of the day, no matter who wins the war, there will always be dead to mourn. Kyuubi reminded him. I know, Q-chan, that's why I'm making it my duty to end this war as fast as possible. War brings nothing but loss, and loss leads to pain, pain leads to anger, and anger leads to hate. And those feelings are what lead to people straying down the dark path. For the force is neither light nor dark, as it is the person who decides which path they choose to take. Quoting your old sensei now, Naru-kun. Next thing you know, you will be teaching your own apprentice. Kyuubi joked as she tried to lighten the mood. The only people I will ever teach would be my own children. Naruto snorted as he finally reached his room and unlocked the door before entering and relocking it behind him. Kyuubi blushed as she imagined her as the mother of Naruto's kids. The image of her and Naruto chasing around blonde and redheads appeared in her head. For that moment in time, Kyuubi would trade anything in her possession, including her demon powers, just to make the image a reality, but alas, the image faded into the back of her mind as she found herself still in the mindscape. Q-chan, you there? Naruto's voice broke her out of her depressing thoughts as she faked a yawn to cover up her lapse in attention. Sorry, Naru-kun, but I'm feeling tired, so why don't we both get some sleep since you have a mission to lead early tomorrow morning anyway? I guess so, Naruto thought as he turned off the light and lay down on his bed. Night, Q-chan. Good night, Naru-kun. Kyuubi replied, but still couldn't help but wish that she was curled up next to him instead of within him. Naruto had met up with the 9 Junin assault group at the entrance of the base before the sun had even risen. He looked at each in turn before his gaze landed on Kenjutsu. Alright team, this will not be your typical mission. We are a group of 10 heading towards an enemy outpost that would most likely have 10 times the amount of men that we do. However, you guys have been briefed on the plan, you just have to concentrate on luring them into the passageway and I'll take it from there. Naruto paused as he looked over the gathered Junin again. I want each one of us to make it out of there in one piece if possible. No stupid heroics or any of that glory bullshit. Understand? Hi Taicho. Captain, they chorused as one, causing Naruto to smile slightly under his helmet. He turned around and vanished in a blur which was quickly followed by 9 other blurs. After an hour of continuous running, the group finally arrived at the outskirts of Shuryu village. Naruto expanded his force awareness and could sense a rather significant amount of troops in there. He pulled out a piece of paper with the layout of the village on it. This is the barracks where most of their forces will be concentrated. Naruto pointed to a rectangular gray block that was situated in the middle of the village. Once we start raising hell, expect a lot of enemy troops to start pouring out of this building. Your job is to lead them through the passageway and get out of there as soon as possible. I want 2 Junins to volunteer for straggler duty as we cannot be certain that every enemy leave the village, so once the others have lured out the majority, I want 2 of you to infiltrate the village and take out any remaining enemies in there. Naruto saw Kenjutsu and another Junin raise their hands. Ah Ken, I expected that from you. What's your name? Ryusui Heiase Taicho. Heiase shook Naruto's outstretched hand. My Kekkei Genkai allows me to literally bend water to my will. Interesting ability Hayase. Alright, both you and Ken are on straggler duty. I want both of you to cover each other's flanks, the rest of us will move to assist you once our plan is accomplished. Naruto said and used his hand to signal for them to move out. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Fire release. Grand fireball technique. Several of the Junins shouted as huge balls of fire slammed into random points of the village as Naruto watched from his perch in a nearby tree. Perhaps I should have reminded them that we want this place in one piece, Naruto mused aloud as he watched a gigantic water dragon smash into a building and collapsing it. As predicted by Naruto, enemy troops started pouring out of the barracks and into the streets. Jutsus, kunais and shurikens were flying through the air as both sides struggled to get the advantage. Suddenly the rebels started to pull back towards the narrow pathway. Upon seeing their enemy fleeing, Yugura's forces roared in victory and began to chase the fleeing rebels through the passage. Guess that's my cue, Naruto thought as he held out both his hands and started to push them together and downwards at the same time. Sweat started to drip down his face as he struggled with some unseen forces and continued to try and push his hands together. The rebels had made it out the other side of the passageway when they heard a loud rumbling sound coming from behind them. They turned around only to see the most amazing thing in their lives. The vertical cliff faces had started to crumble and eventually started an avalanche that buried the entire group of advancing enemy forces. Naruto was panting heavily as he slumped back against the trunk of the tree he was in. He grinned as he saw what he had accomplished. Kenjutsu and Hayase had their jaws hanging off the hinges when they saw their captain bring down two cliffs made of solid rock with just some gestures of his hands. What the hell is he? Hayase asked in awe before he was slapped on the back of his head by Kenjutsu. Ouch. What the hell, man? No idea what the hell he is, but I'm just glad he's on our side. Now, in case you have forgotten, we have a job to do. Kenjutsu grinned with his shark-like teeth as he jumped over the fence while drawing his katana at the same time. Hayase sighed before he jumped over the fence as well. He landed on the opposite side and saw Kenjutsu already rushing towards the barracks. Wait for me, you moron! Hayase shouted as he took off after Kenjutsu, who had already decapitated the poor fool who thought it was safe to stick his head out the barracks door. He saw another Chunin heading for Kenjutsu's back as he was too occupied fighting with another Junin. Hayase quickly summoned water from a nearby puddle and launched it in the form of a spear right through the Chunin's chest. A few minutes later, Naruto and the rest of the Junin's sweat dropped in unison when they returned to the village to find Kenjutsu sitting on a pile of dead enemies while sipping from his water bottle. I see you guys handled it perfectly well without our help, Naruto deadpanned as he surveyed the area, a few buildings destroyed by the surprise attack but nothing too serious. He then looked at his team to see if any of them required medical treatment. Kenjutsu and Hayase were fine while the rest only had shallow cuts and slightly singed clothes. Great job, guys, looks like we managed to secure a victory without losing any men today. Naruto congratulated them. That's great and all, but mind telling us how you managed to bring down two cliffs just by gesturing with your hands? Kenjutsu asked, causing Naruto to blink and look around at the curious faces. It's simple. He waited until the Junins were starting to lean slightly. It's my bloodline. Cue multiple face faults at the simplistic answer as Kenjutsu jumped back to his feet immediately and pointed a finger at Naruto. You expect me to believe there is a bloodline out there that allows you to do that kind of shit? Yes, Naruto replied, simply causing everyone to sweat drop. Now if you guys are done interrogating me, we have to inform Mei about our victory here. Rebel Command Center. Mei-sama, we just received a letter from Revan that they had successfully captured Shuryu village without losing any of our own forces while the enemy had lost their entire force stationed there. A Chunin announced after bursting into the command room. That's excellent news. Ow. I want as many available troops as possible to go and occupy Shuryu village as soon as possible. Someone write a reply that states I want Revan back here immediately. Mei shouted out orders as everyone scrambled to comply. I knew I made the right choice in trusting you, Naruto-kun. Hopefully with you helping us we might be able to win this war. She thought to herself. Shuryu Village. Naruto read the letter that had arrived seconds ago via Carrier Hawk. He turned back to the group of Junin to address them. It has been great working with you guys, sorry, and girl, for this mission, but it looks like I have been recalled to base. Your orders are to remain here until reinforcements arrive to properly secure the village, so I guess I'll see you around. Naruto took turns shaking each of their hands while the only female of the group gave him a hug and peck on his helmet's cheek, causing the guys to snicker. Naruto gave them one last nod before dashing off in the direction of the base. He grinned suddenly at the memories of his dispelled clone. Clone's memories. As soon as the original Naruto had left the village, a shadow slowly inched away from its hiding spot before trying to make a break for it. The shadow was revealed to be an enemy Chunin that had somehow managed to evade detection. He ran as fast as possible to warn his cage about what happened. Unfortunately for him, Naruto had sensed him easily and created a cage bushin to intercept him, which resulted in the Chunin skidding to a halt when he saw the imposing figure of Darth Revan in front of him. How are you here? I saw you leave in the other direction. The man exclaimed in fright as he tried to look for a possible way out. Revan merely held out his hand with a grasping motion, causing the Chunin to suddenly start floating off the forest floor. The man panicked as he struggled to break free of the Force grasp. How are you doing this? The man shouted in fear as he failed to break free. It won't matter to you since you won't be alive long enough to tell anyone. Now you will tell me everything you know about Yagura's forces. Naruto growled as the man suddenly laughed. Ha ha ha. And what makes you think I will tell you that? You will tell me everything you know about Yagura's forces. Naruto pushed as much force power as possible into his suggestion. I will tell you everything I know about Yagura's forces. The man's will broke under Naruto's control over the force. Flashback no Jutsu Kai. Apparently the Chunin had a lot of information regarding Yagura's forces, from troop number to the deployment schedule for the coming week. This information would be vital for planning ambushes as well as making plans for the future. Naruto had granted the man a quick death by snapping his neck. Naruto had finally made it back to the base to find Mei waiting at the entrance for him. He grinned under the helmet as he strode towards her. Mission accomplished, Mei-chan. Naruto saluted playfully as Mei chuckled. I have to say it's a job well done, Revan-kun. Mei replied using his alias as there could be people listening in. Do you have anything you wish to report? As a matter of fact, how would you like to know the deployment schedule for Yagura's forces for the coming week? Naruto asked with an unseen grin as Mei's eyes widened comically at that statement. Why you managed to acquire that kind of sensitive information? She asked in disbelief, causing Naruto to roll his eyes behind his helmet. Do not underestimate the power of the Force. Naruto quoted his deceased master. Is that what your bloodline is called? Mei tried to prod him for information. Naruto decided to place some trust in her as she did with him. Not really. My bloodline has yet to be named, for I am the first person to manifest it. My bloodline allows me to tap into the natural energy of the planet, and no, it is not chakra. Naruto explained as best as he could. From my understanding, chakra is a mutated form of the Force. Chakra is a mixture of physical and spiritual energy that are generated within the body of living things. However, the Force is the energy of the universe. It surrounds everything and binds us together, from plants to humans to the very planet itself. The way you describe it makes it seem like you can do anything with it. Mei concluded from the explanation. Well, not everything, but almost nothing is impossible when you are a master of the Force, which I am only an adept at it. Naruto sighed as he reminded himself that he had more training to do. Interesting. Now what was it about Yagura's deployment plans? Mei shifted the conversation back on track. Well, I do know he is planning a few strike runs here and there, mostly to trick you into keeping your forces thinned out. However, his real plan is to lead his entire army to march on this very base. Naruto drew on a piece of map of Mizu no Kuni, circling the places he had pointed out. That means, Mei paled as she realized what would happen if Yagura were to lead his army straight for their base. Yes, it means he is going to end this war with one final decisive strike. he still thinks that he has the element of surprise that is something we can use to our advantage. Naruto said as he tapped his chin repeatedly. Shouldn't I recall all our forces to the base in this case? Mei asked in concern. Definitely not. That would just tip him off that we know what he's planning. Naruto trailed off as he examined the map further. This open plain between the two forces, yes, that would work perfectly. What is it? Do you have a plan? Mei asked as she looked at the map as well. Not only do I have a plan, but this plan is going to turn the tide of this war if not end it. Naruto waved his hands excitedly. Then I expect you to have the details of this so-called plan ironed out by tomorrow, so you can debrief the entire base on what course of action you want us to take. Mei told him. It will be done by tomorrow morning, Mei-chan. Naruto rolled up the map and sealed it into a storage seal on the inner side of his cloak. Good. I have some routine checkups to perform now. Would you be interested in joining me? Mei asked with a slight blush. Who in the right mind would decline an invitation to spend time with such a beautiful woman? Naruto smirked when he saw Mei's blush increase in intensity. The first stop is the canteen to grab something to eat and we will make our way from there. Mei said once she had her blush under control again. Naruto nodded his consent as he walked side by side with her to the mess hall. He heard snatches of conversation along the way. Hey, see that armored guy beside our leader? A Chunin nudged his friend walking beside him. Of course I do. What's the matter? I heard that he was the leader of the 10-man team that had secured an enemy outpost and wiped out the entire force stationed there without losing any men. No way, that's the guy that I've been hearing about. I won't want to get on his bad side. I heard he had almost killed a Junin without even touching him. I agree, man. I heard the rumors that said he managed to collapse 2 cliffs just by making hand gestures. Seems like someone is becoming quite the star around here. Mei whispered so other people wouldn't overhear. What can I say? When I do something, I do it to the best of my ability. Naruto shrugged his shoulders uncaringly as they continued walking. Oh really? Tell me, Revan-kun, does that motto apply to the bedroom as well? Mei cooed seductively. Wouldn't you like to know, Mei-chan? Naruto countered instantly, causing Mei's brain to run through several scenarios that left her panties slightly damp. Naruto had a small grin under his helmet that he had finally gotten the last say against the auburn-haired female beside him. Konoha's council chambers. Mizuki, you better have a good reason for asking us to gather here today or it's going to be your head on a platter. A fat merchant grunted as he plopped down into his seat. I agree with him, and why isn't the Hokage here? Hyuga Hiyashi sat with his arms crossed as his pupilless eyes gazed upon the form of Mizuki standing in the middle of the chamber. I apologize, esteemed members of the council, for gathering you here today, but I assure you that it is for the betterment of Konoha. And as for why Hokage-sama isn't here, that is because this meeting does not require his presence, so I did not want to distract him from his work. Mizuki grinned inwardly as the council members seemed to settle down after his explanation. So for what purpose have you called us here, for boy? An old, bandaged man by the name of Shimura Danzo asked as he tapped his cane impatiently on the wooden floor. Dear council members, I am sure all of you remember the night we lost the majority of the Uchiha clan to Uchiha Itachi's rampage. Mizuki began as a murmur broke out through the chamber. I believe that we may begin the restoration of the great Uchiha clan faster than we had imagined. Please elaborate on what you mean by that, Mizuki-san. Akamichi Shuza inquired politely. Since Sasuke-san is still not of the correct age to begin repopulating the Uchiha clan, I suggest we start with Mikoto-sama first, as she is still of the prime age to give birth. Mizuki replied, which immediately caused Inuzuka-sume to burst out of her seat. How dare you try and make my friend a breeding factory for a clan of thieves? Sume shouted in outrage, barely controlling herself from tearing the man into tiny shreds. Inuzuka-sama, I didn't mean it like that. Mizuki stammered slightly as he didn't know that Mikoto had a friend on the council. Then tell me exactly what you meant when you said that. Sume snarled but had sat back down in her chair, causing Mizuki to let out a mental sigh of relief. I meant that she should remarry soon and have kids, That way we can ensure that the Sharingan does not die out completely should anything happen to either Mikoto-sama or Sasuke-san. Mizuki said. And who exactly is she to marry, huh? You. Sume growled lowly as if warning him to try anything funny. If she does not find anyone to marry by the end of the coming week, then why shouldn't I marry her? Mizuki countered the statement, causing more discussion among the council members. Troublesome, if she were to find someone else to marry before then. Nara Shikaku asked before Sume had another outburst. Then she would bear that man's children and marry him, simple as that. Mizuki replied a little unsurely this time. Shall we pass a vote on this then? Mitoman Homura asked. The Inuzukas do not accept such a ridiculous request. Sume growled. The Nara clan also object this request. Shikaku said in a bored tone. The Akamichi clan does not support your decision. Shuza said. The Hyuga clan does not support this request. Hiyashi said, but for the reason that he didn't want the Uchiha clan back. The Yamanaka clan objects as well. Inoichi said. The Aburame clan does not support this request. Shibi said in his usual monotone voice. In the end, only these 6 clan heads had opposed the request while the remaining 9 council members approved it, leading to a grinning Mizuki as his plan was accomplished. I can't believe those old farts on the council approved of that absurd request. Sume shouted as she threw her hands into the air in frustration. Troublesome, but there isn't anything we can do except give her a heads up regarding the matter. Shikaku sighed as he placed his head back on the table. Shikaku has a point, Sume. Who knows, Mikoto might actually find someone by the end of next week. Shuza suggested. Unlikely, but you may be right. I guess I'm heading to Miko-chan's home to warn her first. Sume walked out of the council chambers and made her way towards the Uchiha district. Uchiha household. Mikoto was cleaning up after lunch when she heard someone knocking on her front door. She mentally prayed that it wasn't that annoying Mizuki again. She dried her hands on a nearby towel before heading to the door and opening it slowly to reveal Sume standing at her doorstep. Sume-chan. This is a surprise, what are you doing here? Mikoto smiled slightly, but that disappeared when she noticed the frown on her friend's face. Is something wrong? Miko-chan, I believe this conversation would be better suited within your home. Sume told her as Mikoto quickly invited her in and locked the door behind them. What's bothering you, Sume-chan? Mikoto asked once the pair had sat down on the sofas in the living room. Sume sighed heavily before repeating the events in the council chambers up until she decided to warn her about it. Mikoto had a horrified look on her usually beautiful face after hearing the lengths Mizuki had gone through to get her for himself. I'm sorry that I couldn't do anything to overrule their decision, Miko-chan, Sume said apologetically. It's alright, Sume-chan. I know that you couldn't do anything in that situation. Mikoto had a small smile on her face as she tried to think of a way out of this. So, do you have anyone you would consider marrying? It would be better that you marry someone you actually like instead of that bastard Mizuki. Sume spat his name out like it was poison. I'm not really sure. Mikoto trailed off as the image of Naruto in his Darth Revan attire came to mind, causing her to blush. Unfortunately for her, Sume had caught sight of the blush and was currently smirking up a storm. Oh, Miko-chan has a crush already, huh? So who's the lucky guy who caught your attention? Sume teased. Sume-chan. Mikoto whined with a pout before finally crumbling under Sume's relentless questioning. Fine, I'll tell you on the grounds that you don't tell anyone else. Who do you take me for? Sume grasped her chest in mock hurt, causing Mikoto to giggle slightly. Well, it's the guy who saved me from Itachi during the massacre. Mikoto admitted reluctantly. You mean that Darth Revan guy that has been stopping all the crime in Konoha recently? Sume asked. I thought you said he was wearing a cloak and helmet. He was wearing a cloak and helmet, but he showed me his face before he left. Don't tell anyone I told you that. Mikoto looked at Sume seriously, who agreed to keep her mouth shut. So, was he hot? Sume asked suddenly with a feral grin. Mikoto blushed as she remembered the angular features, the wild blonde hair, the feral whisker marks and calm cerulean eyes. You could say that. With Naruto's reinforced cage Bushin in Konoha. Naruto's clone had just escaped capture by the Anbu squad yet again when he spotted the lone figure of Shimura Danzo exiting a worn-down building. Now what could be in there that could be so interesting? The clone thought as he stealthily hid in the shadows of a nearby alley until he was sure that Danzo had left before moving towards the building. He spread out his force awareness and found that there was a dim but still readable source of life inside. His curiosity piqued at this. Let's see what you have to hide from the Hokage, Mr. One-Eyed Mummy. The clone thought as it scaled the side of the building and entered through a broken window. He slowly made his way towards the faint force presence. The trail seemed to lead through a pair of titanium doors that were locked securely. The clone smirked slightly. It takes a lot more than a fancy lock and titanium doors to stop this clone. He held out his hands and slowly moved them apart from each other. The steel doors groaned and slowly but surely shifted out of the way, creating a small path that the clone could squeeze through. What the clone found on the other side both shocked and angered him. There lying on a bed was a comatose Uzumaki Kushina. Man, boss won't be happy to hear about this when he dispels me when he gets back. The clone flipped a stray lock of red hair back into place. Damn, when Q-chan said my mom was hot I didn't think she meant drop dead gorgeous. True to what the clone thought, the body of Kushina didn't seem to have aged a day since the day of the Kyuubi's attack. The clone mentally sighed as he flipped through a chart at the base of the bed. Apparently she was in a deep coma caused by the serious extent of her wounds. Even medical ninjutsu couldn't seem to wake her from her comatose state. The boss should be able to do it with his knowledge of the force, the clone mused to itself before looking at Kushina's unmoving body. Sorry, but I won't be able to do anything for the moment, so I'll be leaving you here until the boss returns from his trip to Kiri. The clone told the body as if it could hear him. The clone left through the gap and used the force to shift the doors back into their correct position before exiting the building via another window. With Naruto in Mizu no Kuni. Naruto had spent the day walking with Mei through the base. They talked about their respective childhoods and about their likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams. Naruto still didn't trust her enough to tell her everything, but he told her more than what he would tell other people. So that's the entire base that we have seen today. I guess it's time to hit the sack. Mei yawned and stretched out her arms to emphasize her tiredness. Well then, I will see you tomorrow morning for the briefing, Mei-chan, good night. Naruto waved back at her as he walked down another corridor towards his room. Mei watched him leave with a slight look of longing before shaking herself out of her stupor and heading back to her own sleeping quarters as well. Naruto unrolled the map and placed it on his bedside table as he examined it more thoroughly to make sure that the plan he had thought up would be executed without a hitch. What do you think of the plan, Q-chan? He asked for his tenant's opinion. I think it's like the rest of your plans, bothering on insane and genius. Kyuubi replied honestly. I'm not sure to take that as a compliment or an insult. Naruto's sweat dropped. It's up to you how you see it. By the way, what are you planning to do with Sanbi-chan inside the seal on Yagura? Kyuubi asked. I'm not sure yet, but she should be released upon the death of her host, right? Since her seal isn't the Shiki Fujin, so releasing her from it shouldn't be too much of a hassle. Naruto sighed as he tried to determine how Yagura fought. It would be obvious that he would be proficient in water ninjutsu since they are in Mizu no Kuni, but did he use taijutsu as well or any form of weaponry? Naruto knew that Yagura was able to fully control the Sanbi and take on her beast form during a battle, which would be problematic. I guess I will have to rely on my skills in both the force as well as chakra to keep me alive during the battle. Naruto thought as he finalized his plans before turning in for the night. Next morning, Naruto stood beside Mei as she addressed the entire base of rebels. He noticed that Kenjutsu and Heiase were part of the crowd, so that means Shuryu village was now secured. Rebels of Kiri, we have been fighting Yagura for the past year and a half now, as he believed that people with bloodlines should be killed. We have seen our fair share of both victory and defeat, but a major event is going to take place that will decide the winner and loser of this war. I now leave you with Darth Revan, as he is the one who came by the information as well as thought up a plan to counter it. Mei gave him a nod as she stepped down from the podium. I am a mercenary that was brought in by your leader to help in your war efforts. I didn't do it for money but for the reason that war only brings about suffering. The information that I acquired through my own means state that Yugura is going to launch several fake attacks at these locations. Naruto gestured to multiple places on the giant map behind him. However, the true target is this very base. Yugura plans to spread our forces out to thin and then smash us in one decisive blow. Mutterings started to break out among the crowd when Naruto had told them about Yugura's true intention. Many people started to question their chances in winning the war. But Naruto paused as he gave the crowd time to settle. We have the element of surprise since Yugura believes that we don't know his true intention, so I have devised an ambush that would catch his army off guard. This open plain between both the bases is the perfect spot for it. The rebels will use earth jutsus to excavate the area underneath this plain into several tunnels. We will then line these tunnels with exploding tags that we will set off when they are crossing the field. In the midst of their confusion, we will attack from the surrounding forest. Silence reigned through the briefing room after Naruto had finished explaining his plan, until Kenjutsu started to break out into laughter. Ha ha ha. Another crazy plan, Revan. Don't worry man, I got your back. You have my support as well Revan. Hayase added as Naruto gave them a nod of acknowledgement. You can count on us as well Revan Taicho. The group of Junin he had lead chorused as the rest of the crowd roared their approval of the plan. Naruto sighed in relief as he believed the most difficult part of the plan was getting the rebels to actually go along with his plan. He saw that Mei and Aower gave him nods of approval. He smiled under his helmet as he walked over to them. Damn, I've heard of some crazy plans in my life, but this one really takes the cake. In my time, shinobi faced each other on the battlefield face to face. Ao ranted on again about the old days, causing Naruto and Mei to develop a common twitching eyebrow. Ow, shut up or we'll kill you. They both said in unison with the same sickly sweet voice and smile, though you couldn't see Naruto's as he had his helmet on. Sorry, Ao apologized with sweat running down his face and quickly running off while muttering under his breath again. What did I say that time? I hope that the plan goes through smoothly, because if it doesn't then the shit will hit the fan so fast you won't even have time to blink. Naruto sighed as Mei gave him a comforting squeeze on his shoulder. I'm sure everything will be fine Naruto-kun, I trust your judgment. She smiled and used his real name to show that she had really meant what she said. Arigato Mei-chan, but I want you to promise me something. Naruto held her by her shoulders as he depolarized his visor so she could see his eyes. What is it? Mei asked, slightly nervous since she had never seen Naruto this serious before. Promise me that when the battle starts, you will stay as far away as possible from Yugura and I as we battle. Do not interfere no matter how bad the situation looks. Do I make myself clear? Naruto squeezed her shoulders slightly as he said this. Mei was silent as she thought about it. I promise, as long as you promise me one thing. Mei looked him straight in the eyes as she talked. Promise me that you will make it out of the battle safely and that you will return to me. Naruto's eyes softened as he heard her plea. He drew her into an awkward hug since he was still in his armor. I promise I will make it out alive Mei-chan. Naruto released her from his hold before chuckling. Then maybe we can go on a date after the war has ended. We shall see Naru-kun, we shall see. Mei smirked as she walked away with an extra sway in her hips, causing Naruto to stare dumbly for a moment before breaking out of it. God damn it, I lost again. Naruto shouted out loud. Mei snickered as she heard the shout and thought. Don't mess with the best Naru-kun. Previously on Naruto, Force Unleashed. Arigato Mei-chan, but I want you to promise me something. Naruto held her by her shoulders as he depolarized his visor so she could see his eyes. What is it? Mei asked, slightly nervous since she had never seen Naruto this serious before. Promise me that when the battle starts, you will stay as far away as possible from Yugura and I as we battle. Do not interfere no matter how bad the situation looks. Do I make myself clear? Naruto squeezed her shoulders slightly as he said this. Mei was silent as she thought about it. I promise, as long as you promise me one thing. Mei looked him straight in the eyes as she talked. Promise me that you will make it out of the battle safely and that you will return to me. Naruto's eyes softened as he heard her plea. He drew her into an awkward hug since he was still in his armor. I promise I will make it out alive, Mei-chan. 5 days later. Day of battle. Naruto stood at the far end of the open plain in his armor, the black cloak flapping slightly as a small gust of wind blew through the area. Apparently this was part of the plan as well. He was to make sure the army stopped in the opportune spot where the maximum amount of casualties will be inflicted by the exploding tags. With the small amount of rebels that actually use earth element techniques, the tunnels had taken them 2 whole days to excavate with small breaks for meals. On the 3rd day, the tunnels were lined expertly with exploding tags, but these weren't normal tags. Naruto had used his rather impressive knowledge regarding Fuinjutsu to maximize their blast potential, making sure to take out more enemies with the blast radius. Spreading out his force awareness, he could feel Mei's presence in the dense jungle foliage towards the east of the open plain. Naruto knew the enemy won't be able to sense them since he had placed some chakra suppressor tags around the ambush area to make the rebels' chakra signature nearly unreadable. Let's see where the advancing army is, Naruto thought as he pushed his force awareness further out across the open plain. Just as he was about to reach his maximum range, he felt it. A large group of force presences moving in sync towards him. Yugito was the one in front as his force presence had a double layer to it. Naruto found out that all Jinchurikis would have a double layer feel in the force to him, the inner presence being the Biju while the outer presence is the host. After a few more minutes, Naruto saw the approaching army with his own eyes and saw the look of surprise and confusion on many faces due to his presence. He waited until they were in the best position before he held out a hand to signal that they stop in their tracks. Yugito lifted an eyebrow but decided to humor him and gestured for the army to stop. Greetings, stranger, and who might you be? Yugito asked as he tried to sense the threat level of the black-clad person in front of him. My name, well, you may call me Darth Revan. Naruto's voice had that metallic quality whenever he spoke through his helmet. Very well, Revan-san, would you mind explaining why you are here as well as why you told us to stop? Yugito narrowed his eyes at Naruto. I am here because my presence is needed here, Naruto answered in a cryptic fashion. As for why I told you to stop, I wish to give you a chance to stop this foolishness and live in harmony with the bloodline clans.